Curl is a command line utility used to retrieve a URL, typically from the web through HTTP or HTTPS, though it does support FTP and a number of other protocols. In this video, I'll demonstrate the basics of curl and a few of its more common options. So let's make sure we have it installed. We'll do sudo apt-get install curl. I believe it does come installed by default in Ubuntu, but just to make sure, we can do apt-get install curl, and it tells me curl is already at the newest version, so we're ready to go. The basics of it is do curl and provide a URL, so http:// and some website. In this case, I'm going to use xkcd.com as an example. So what it does is gets the web page and outputs to standard out by default, so to this terminal window. Now I'm going to cd into documents, and instead of outputting to a terminal window, I'm going to output to a file. So I can do curl -o to specify an output file, give it a file name, in this case xkcd.html, and then specify the URL. And this downloads the page and saves it to a file. Now you'll notice here quite quickly this download progress indicator flashed and then disappeared. Since it's a small site, it doesn't have time to display any progress indicators or percentage transferred or this time information about how much time is left in your download. If it's a large file, you'll get to see this information, which can be quite handy. But in our case, with this small website, we didn't see very much. So now I can do cat xkcd.html to output the contents to verify that I did receive the web page successfully. And there it is. Another common option is the -c option for cookies. So we'll often use cookies for session handling and interact with the site handling these cookies back and forth. So the example I'm going to use, I'm going to call this Twitter cookie.text, because I'm going to connect to https://twitter.com. So it outputs the contents of the page, but into a file, it puts the cookie information. So if I look here, if I output using cat Twitter cookie.text, you'll see it has some preamble from curl, and then it has the cookie information. So this _Twitter_sess for session cookie, and this guest ID because I haven't logged in. Now if I'd like to pass the cookie back and forth to the site, I can use curl -b, and this is the input of the cookie. So this is the cookie information that it passes to the website, and then -c of where to save the cookie information sent from the website. And then I can specify the website name, the URL, and it passes that information back and forth. Now another thing we often do with curl is make HTTP GET requests and POST requests. So this is like submitting form information in your web browser. So I can specify a GET request right on the URL. So the standard for this is give the URL. So I'm going to connect to archive.org, index.php, and pass as a GET request. So everything after this question mark, so it takes name value pairs. So output equals JSON is the name and value I'm going to pass. Now if there were more, I could put ampersand and specify another name equals value, ampersand, etc., and pass as many as I'd like or are needed. So in this case, there's only one name value pair, so this output equals JSON. This tells this website, which supports this feature, to send me the contents of the page in JSON format instead of the regular HTML. So I make this request, and you'll see here it has the characteristic curly braces and the usual JSON format variables, the names and values. Now, if I'd like to do the same request as a POST request, which this website supports, I can do curl -d, output equals JSON, and then give it the same site, archive.org/index.php. So instead of putting it onto the URL, I've passed it as a POST request, and it outputs the same information. Another thing that comes up, you'll notice that there was the connections to HTTPS, so these secure connections. Now, if I specify a website with an invalid certificate or a self-signed certificate not signed by certificate authority, it gives me a warning. So I know a website already, stevescott.ca, my own website, doesn't have an HTTPS or an SSL certificate that's verified by a certificate authority. What I need to do in this case is specify the -K option, which they call the insecure option. So this will allow any certificate at all to come through. It's still an HTTPS connection, but as a warning, without a signed certificate from a CA, it does open the door for man-in-the-middle attacks on the connection. So always proceed with caution when using the -K option. But instead of a warning or this error in this case, it will return the contents of the page regardless of the certificate. And you'll see here it outputted the contents of the page. Now, another thing that comes up quite often is HTTP authentication. In a web browser, if you connect to a website that has HTTP auth enabled, it will give you a modal window, so this pop-up window asking for a username and password to access the site. Now, to do this in curl, we need to specify the -U option. So we give it a curl -U, a name and a password, then the URL. I'm not going to demonstrate this here, but if you have a website that you need to connect to through curl that requires HTTP auth, this is how you specify it. Another common option is the -H option, so curl -H, which lets you specify a custom header to pass to the URL. One of the common ones we pass is content type. Obviously in a web browser we often pass text HTML, but we could do things like application/JSON or CSV, or depending on whatever the site supports or needs to see. So this tells the server that we're expecting a JSON response. And then we can specify the URL. So that's going to bring this demo to a close. I've covered some important options, but there are many, many more options in curl. You can see some others by bringing up curl -H for the command line help, or we can look in the manual by typing man curl. And it gives a complete description of curl. Also, you can use curl from your C++ or Python or PHP applications, where many languages provide interfaces into the curl library. And that wraps up this introduction to curl.